guys, it's me again with Uruguay. And in 1516, the Spanish named Juan Diaz de Solis became the first European to reach what is now Uruguay. In the 16th century, the Spanish took Argentina while Portugal took Brazil. What is now Uruguay was between them, but it lacks mineral wealth. And its lack of mineral wealth meant that for a long time both nations took little interest in it. But in 1726, the Spanish took Uruguay and founded Montevideo. Sorry about Montevideo. Sorry. And in 1776, Uruguay became part of the Viceroyalty of La Plata. And in 1811, the people of Uruguay rebelled against Spanish rule, led by José Gervasio Artigas. However, in 1821, Brazil annexed Uruguay, but Uruguay finally became independent in 1828, as they adopted a constitution in 1830. But unfortunately, in 1839, Uruguay became a civil war, but was fought within Uruguay between the Blancos or Whites or Colorados, the Reds, and in 1852 the Colorados took control of Uruguay, and then from 1865 to 1870 Uruguay joined Brazil and Argentina in the war against Paraguay. And in later parts of the 19th century, the population of Uruguay rose as many immigrants came from Europe and the economy developed. Sheep farming became very important. By 1900, the population of Uruguay had risen to 1 million. And in 1903, José Danez, please correct me on that, became president of Uruguay. And he was president from 1903 to 1903. And again from 1911 to 1915, a slightly more successful term. And Ordonez was a farmer and he introduced a welfare state in Uruguay. 1932, women in Uruguay were given the right to vote. In Uruguay, as Uruguay remained neutral during the Second World War. And then in the 1950s, the price of wool fell and the economy suffered. And in the 1960s, a Marxist urban guerrilla movement called Tupamaros began operating within Uruguay, and finally in 1973 the army seized power in a coup, as the military dictatorship in Uruguay lasted for 11 years. In the early 1980s, Uruguay suffered an economic crisis and there were many protests against the regime in 1984. And in 1985, Uruguay did finally return to civilian rule as prosperity returned to Uruguay in Uruguay till 1999 when the recession began which lasted until 2002. And from there the economy did start to grow again, as the population is believed to be around 3.4 million. And yeah, there's El Paso de la Cruz, and this is tells of a kind of sinful man in his past. He used to frequent the river Yí as a man possessing no talisman, given by an Indian sorcerer who made his dark past erase and became a man of reference and respect for his people. As being envied and believing he was hiding wealth, he was killed by a group of men who left his body in the open. Not being buried, his soul wandered in the form of blue light and terrified Gauchos passing through the area, and because of the fear in the inhabitants of the zone, all began to nail crosses in its name. After a time, a tree was born, and so was a large right took the form of a cross and became a reference for passage in the area, but was now holy and not feared. I'm not sure if you heard that, but I have a feeling there's a thunderstorm coming. But I will say one thing, as it does include many things and all. Like countries, one of which is Uruguay, otherwise I wouldn't be mentioning it. It also mentions Argentina, which I have also mentioned. And it may also mention Chile, which I may do next week or the week after, depending on what's going on. As some of you may have heard of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571. If depending on how old of you, how old you are, you may have heard of it in the news when it actually happened. This is also called the Miracle of the Andes, or Spanish El Milagro de los Andes. There's the flight of an airplane chartered by the Uruguayan amateur rugby team that crashed in the Andes mountains in Argentina on October 13th, 1972, as the wreckage was not located for more than 2 months. As of the 45 people on the plane, only 16 survived the ordeal, as there was a lot of international attention, as it was revealed that the survivors had resorted to cannibalism. And as in 1972, the Old Christians Club chartered a Uruguayan Air Force plane to transport the team from Montevideo, Uruguay, to Santiago in Chile. And on October 16th, a twin-engine Fairchild Turbo left Carrasco International Airport carrying 5 crew members and 40 passengers. In addition, the club members, friends, family and others who were also on board having been recruited to help pay the cost of the plane, as because of the poor weather in the mountains, they were forced to stay overnight in Mendoza in Argentina. And before departing at about 18 minutes past 2 in the afternoon the following day, although Santiago lay to the west of Mendoza, the Fairchild was boom boom. The Fairchild was built to fly higher than about 22,500 feet, or about 6,900 meters. As the pilot spotted a course south to the pass of Planchon. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Where the aircraft could safely clear the Andes in approximately an hour after takeoff. The pilots notified the air controllers that he was flying over the pass, and shortly thereafter, he radioed that he reached Corico in Chile, in some 110 miles or 178 kilometers from Santiago, and turned north. But the pilots had misjudged and the location of the aircraft, but was still in the Andes, and unaware of the mistake, the controllers cleared him to begin descent and prepare for landing. But soon after, the Chilean control tower was unable to contact the plane, and at about 3:30 p.m. on October the 13th, the aircraft struck the mountain, losing its right wing. The weather for you. And approximately 3:30 p.m. on October 13th, the aircraft struck the mountain, losing its right wing, and then left its plane wing before crashing into a remote valley in Argentina near the Chilean border. And a search for the missing plane was launched, but it soon became clear that the last reported location was incorrect, and rescue efforts shifted to the Andes, and the survivors later reported spotting several planes. But the snow-covered mountains made detection of the white planes difficult. Furthermore, the harsh environments led many to believe that there were no survivors. After 8 days, the search was called off, though later rescue efforts were undertaken by family members, as the crash initially killed 12 people, leaving 33 survivors, a number of whom were injured, and at an altitude of approximately 11,500 feet. or 3,500 meters. The group faced snow and freezing temperatures, while the plane's fuselage was largely intact. It provided limited protection from the harsh elements. In addition, meager food supplies, mainly candy bars and wine, like sweets and all, were gone in about a week. And after a lengthy discussion, the starving survivors resorted to eating the dead, those who had already died. And over the next few weeks, 6 others died. And further hardship struck on October 29th, when an avalanche buried the fuselage and filled part of it with snow, causing 8 more deaths. And during this time, several of the survivors, the expeditionaries, had been surveying the area for an escape route, and on December 12th, just 16 people were still alive, and 3 expeditionaries set out for help, though one later returned to the wreckage. And after a difficult trek, the other 2 men finally came across 3 herdsmen in the village of Las Martinez, Chile, on the December 20th. However, the Chileans were on the opposite side of the river, as a noise of which made it hard to hear. As the herdsmen indicated that they would return the following day, and early the next morning, the Chileans reappeared, and the 2 groups communicated by writing notes on paper, and they literally then kind of wrapped around rocks and flew across the river. As an initial note from the survivors began, they come from a plane that fell in the mountains. The authorities were notified, and on the 22nd of December, 2 helicopters were sent to the wreckage. As 6 survivors were flown to safety, but bad weather delayed 8 others from being rescued until the next day. And resulting media frenzy, the survivors revealed that they had been forced to commit cannibalism, as the mission caused a backlash until one of the survivors claimed that it had been inspired by the Last Supper, in which Jesus gave his disciples bread and wine, when he stated that were his body and blood. As the explanation helped sway public opinion, and the church later absolved the men, as the ordeal was the basis of a number of books and films, including the bestseller Alive in 1974 by Pierce Paul Reed, which was adapted to the big screen in 1993. As several other survivors did write books about the ordeal. Yeah. Remember the past, and no matter how depressing. As there was once someone called George Santayana that said, "Those that forget the past are condemned to repeat it." So yeah, forget the past and we can all move on. So yeah, bye for now.